I'm Rolmo, and this is Rolmo, Interviews with Positive Energy. Today we're going to be learning about the Northern Treasures, which is a collection of revealed teachings or termas that began to emerge in 14th century Tibet and that continue to play an important role in today's lineages. I'm speaking with Michael Burroughs from Santa Cruz, California, and Michael has been exploring his deep personal connection with the Northern Treasures since 1985, and today he's committed to helping to preserve this lineage and establish it in the West. So I welcome you to Rolmo, Michael. Thank you for this interview.
Thank you for asking me. I'm very happy to be here.
It's a pleasure, and I'm so enjoying the tanka that's behind you. Rigzin Godem, we'll have a chance to talk about him in a few moments, but let's just start with your personal history, if I may.
Sure.
I know that you were born in the United States in the Tennessee Mountains,
Right.
and your higher education spans music, Eastern philosophy, and Buddhist Christian studies.
And counseling.
And counseling, good. I'll remember that. So, Michael, my understanding is that you met Penna Rinpoche during his first visit to the United States in 1985, and that you had a private audience with him in which he guided you towards doing certain meditation practices, which turned out to be taken from the cycle of teachings known as the Northern Treasures. Unfortunately, he didn't give you those texts, so it took a while for you to find those texts. And I know that as you were looking for those texts, you found yourself in Bhutan. And one day you met an old yogi in Bhutan who again spoke of your connection with the Northern Treasures. So I'd like to start here, if you could take us to that meeting with the old yogi in Bhutan.
I had gone to Bhutan to pursue another set of teachings. And I walked into this old yogi's room. He was well known for being a Tibetan Akampa who had moved there in 1959, or maybe before 1959. He had gone to a remote part in the eastern branch of Bumtang. He sat naked in a room. All he wore was a gold fleece jacket that wasn't zipped up. He was famous for doing divinations, and he started talking as soon as I walked into the room. And he spoke evidently the local Bumtang dialect, and then that was translated into Zonka, and that was translated into some kind of a loose kind of English.
I understand.
I was trying to do a fake beginner's mind. And I just sat down and said, please tell me about my Dharma connections. Just like that. And he talked for 30 minutes. While someone scribbled notes and someone whispered in my ear. And it took a while to unravel that he was talking about that I should look at the teachings of Tuku Zambadrakpa and Rigzin Godem. And he also mentioned Pimalingpa and then also Garwang Dorje. But he didn't give me Garwang Dorje's name. He just said, you should look at this. Now, because he probably didn't even know Garwang Dorje's name. He's not known in Bhutan. He's famous in Sikkim and Nepal.
And these are all connections with the Northern Treasures, is that right?
Yes.
Then I know that shortly thereafter you were at the University of Virginia, where you had a chance encounter with Gene Smith. And Gene also made a connection between you and the Northern Treasures.
We were having lunch, and Gene leaned across the table, and I'd never met Gene before. I really didn't even know who he was. And he said, you know, the worst job I did was the last job I did. And I said, oh, what was that? And he said, Riggs and Godem and Garwang Dorje. And I said, oh, that's too bad. I'm sorry to hear that. What was so bad about it? And he said, well, he knew the funding was coming to an end. He rushed it. There were a lot of mistakes and there were omissions. And then he looked at me and he said, there's at least one book of Garwang Dorje I couldn't find, the Pimaningyu, the Whispered Teachings of Padmasambhava. He said, I looked everywhere. So 5, 6 years later, I sent an email and said, that book you told me about at that lunch, I just found.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
it says, I looked everywhere in Tibet, India, Nepal, and Bhutan. I could not find this book. Where did you find it? I found it in a library in Germany.
Germany, wow. You have to be in the right place at the right time for these things.
Yep. And then I asked him, I said, do you have a copy of Garwang Dorje's Chut volume? And he said, wrote back and said, there's no such thing. And I wrote back and he said, well, I have that too.
Well, he must have been really pleased. So, did you ever find the texts for the meditation practices that Penna Rinpoche originally recommended for you?
In 1998, I was in Boulder, Colorado, and Khinchen Sewan Gyatso was visiting, and he just mentioned that Taglung Setral Rinpoche had been invited to go to Namdro Ling and to give the Wong and the Lung for all the northern treasures. And that happened to be one time in my life when I was able, I had the time and the money, I could go. So I just went.
Can you repeat that name for us?
Taklung Setral Rinpoche, who is now the supreme head of the Nyingma.
I see. Okay. So he was there when you got to India.
Yes.
Good.
He was giving he is the head of the Northern Treasures also. And, but at that time, no one knew who he was. But Penna Rinpoche had invited him to come to Bailakupe and give this set of teachings. He handed me a stack of practices and said, you should do these every day. And in there were the 2 practices Penna Rinpoche had told me about years before.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for that story. It's a beautiful journey all over the globe of connection. I'd like to go back and let's backtrack into the history now of the Northern Treasures. Their revealed teachings or termas that came from what are called golden Dakini scripts. And so now we go back to the 14th century in Tibet. And how were the original Dakini scrolls of the Northern Treasures discovered?
Well, actually, the Northern Treasures is like a tree. It has a main branch and a main trunk and many branches. The first part of the Northern Treasures that to be discovered was actually a branch. And that's a famous prayer that probably many of people have heard of called the Leodunma, or the Prayer in 7 Chapters.
To Guru Rinpoche.
To Guru Rinpoche.
Yes, we do that. Yeah, that's still a prayer very important for the Nyingma to this day. So that Leodunma, prayer in 7 verses to Guru Rinpoche, comes from the Northern Treasures.
This came out in 2 different discoveries by Tulku Zambodrakpa. He took them out in the Western year would be 1352 and 1362. And then he gave these scrolls to 3 of his disciples. And he told them, now you're going to go over here and you'll meet a yogi and he'll have a mala or either a text or a statue of Vajrakalaya. And he'll complain about the situation of Tibet. And he'll be talking about how terrible the Kali Yuga is and that the royal family, the Trisondetsen's lineage line, that was the kings of Guntang, have fallen into really hard times. So the three were camped out beside a stream, and here came a yogi, and he was carrying all three. And they did what Tibetans do. They said, sit down and have tea. And while they were making tea, this guy launched into this entire monologue about everything that Tulku Zambutrakpa said. And this yogi was Rigzen Godim.
Okay. So tell
They
us the
gave
story
him a
of Rigzen Goden. He's in the tanka behind you, and he has these vulture feathers protruding from his top knot, which is part of
Yes,
his name, right?
yes. And the feathers, first there were three, and then there were some more that grew later in life. And I mean, they call them vulture feathers. They have to be some kind of big cowlick. But they did look like vulture feathers, evidently. So it fascinates me how something ordinary gets transformed, you know, in story and the way we believe and our perception that, and then we retell the story and then it becomes vulture feathers.
Yes.
But whatever it was different than anybody else had.
Homage to the imagination, the sacred
Right,
imagination. So this
right.
person turned out to be Rigzen Godem, and so what is his role in the Northern Treasures? So far we have the branch that was discovered by this Tulku, and now we're meeting with Rigzen Godem.
He took these three scrolls and transcribed the Dakini script of Leodunma.
The 7 verses. Mm-hmm.
So in some ways, this was a shared terma.
I see.
Tulku Zambudrakpa took out the scrolls, but Rigzen Godim did the transcribing.
Clear. Mm-hmm.
And then Rigzen Godim took some of his disciples, and they used this as the key. These prayers were the key. And in the Western year 1366, he discovered the rest of, or the main trunk of the Northern Treasures.
What happened to those treasures at that time in Tibet or throughout the Himalaya? Were they disseminated? Were there successive lineages?
Rigzen Godim actually left three lines or lineages.
Mm-hmm.
One through his family lineage, a disciple lineage, and a third lineage through his Sangyun,
Mm-hmm.
or his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And those three lineages continued until the fourth Rigzen Godim, named Pema Trinley, who reunited the three back into one stream.
So during his lifetime, the Northern Treasures, they reached remote areas such as Ladakh, I read, and southern Tibet, and even as far east as Kham, right?
Yes.
And this is the same Rigzen Goden who opened the hidden valley that we know as Sikkim today?
Yes. Rigzen Godim took out most of his treasures all at once. But after that, he moved to Sikkim,
Mm-hmm.
and he opened that Bayul.
And he had incarnations afterwards that were
Yes.
important for the lineage, I believe.
On the Tanka, I have only his next three, Legden Dorje,
Yes.
Nagi Wangpo, and Pema Trinley.
So Nagi Wangpo, that sounds familiar to me from the times when I visited Dorje Drak Monastery in Tibet. Is that the same?
Yeah, that's him. That's
Dorje
him.
Drak Monastery then became one of the mother lineages of the Nyingma in Tibet. And it survives until today, and it is kind of the home in Tibet of the Northern Treasures. Is that correct?
It's true. That is true. And there were, at one point, 11 lines of Tulkus living there. Tagun Setral is the one who made it out. And
he left Tibet in the 1950s, you mean?
Yes. Yes.
I see.
And then he built a small monastery, and then At some point, the current Rigzen Chimpo incarnation got out of Tibet for a vacation. He went to Nepal. He visited, for instance, Shechen Gompa, and then he went to Shimla, and he left a letter, and he said, "You're in charge now," and gave Tagling Sot Rinpoche this letter, and then he went back to Tibet.
Yes, when I'm in Lhasa, I hear that he's living in Lhasa now, although I haven't been able to meet him.
I know. I really want to go there and meet him sometime.
Yes. I think it's really wonderful in a way that he returned to Tibet because the local community at Dorje Drak is very active there still. And I think that's somehow part because that he remained in Lhasa, you know, that was an important decision. So we're going back to the metaphor. We have the first branch of the Leu Dudma, we have the main trunk of Rigzen Godem, and then in the 17th century there were more treasures that were added by Garwang Dorje.
Yes.
And so tell us about Garwang Dorje and how he revealed his treasures.
There are two main yangtares that Rigzen Godem. A yangtare is a treasure the Teretan takes out and then he puts back.
I see.
One is by a Teretan named Tini Lingpa. Tini Lingpa was actually a Drigun Kagyu, and he's the rebirth of Rigzen Godem's other daughter, not Pimasel, but Nugent Saleh. And Garwang Dorje is a tulku of three of Pamasan Baba's heart sons, Nanam Dorje Dujam, Namkai Ningpo, and if the camera weren't rolling, it would roll off.
Jana Kumara.
Yeah, thank you. Nyak Kumara. And thank you.
It's okay. I happen to know that name just from traveling in Tibet. Otherwise, I wouldn't know it.
And Garwang Dorje took this, one famous volume called the Dorsim Tuki Melong, a Vajrasattva text.
Yes, that's the mirror of the enlightened mind of Vajrasattva, and I understand that to be a text in the language of Dzogchen, Great Perfection.
Yes, that combines the 6 yogas of Naropa in the language of Dzogchen.
Wow, that is so wonderful. Garab Dorje, also the Teretan treasure revealer, he is contemporary of the 5th Dalai Lama.
Yes.
And they had a close relationship.
Yes. At some point when they met, the 5th Dalai Lama investigated Garwang Dorje to check the authenticity of his termas. And he consulted with Terdak Lingpa.
Minderling Terdak Lingpa.
The Terdak Lingpa who started Minderling. I have to, as a sidebar, that must be such an amazing time.
Yes.
Because there were the Tuksedawa and Sungtrul, the two Pimalingpa Tulkus, and the 5th Dalai Lama, and Drikung Rinchen Punsok, and Tini Lingpa, and Terdak Lingpa, and Lochen Dharmashri, and just these amazing Teretan club.
Yeah. Hopefully we were there like a little fly on the wall or something, huh?
So I hope I had the karma to be a mosquito that bit one.
So the Dalai Lama endorsed Garwang Dorje Rinpoche, and as a result, those treasures became quite famous. He had thousands of disciples, and also this is somehow connected. There was a prophecy about the well-being and the prosperity of Tibet, depending upon these treasures.
Yes. It's Dujam Rinpoche in his History of the Nyingma says that these treasures served Tibet like a minister serves the king. They really were given, especially for the king and his descendants, as special protection for them.
I see.
And that is for Trison Detsen's royal line of descent. Okay. And then there are also prophecies in the Northern Treasures where it says that the Northern Treasures protect not just Tibet, but actually all of Buddha Dharma. And when the Northern Treasures disappear, the entire all of Buddhism is in danger of disappearing. That
Okay.
so they serve more than just Tibet and
Great.
more than just Vajrayana.
Right, and if you manage, and whatever you bring to the West, this will be a part of the longevity of this treasure. So I think this is such a great mission that you have, and I'm honored to get in at the beginning of it in the West. As you know, I have a nonprofit organization. I'm Jana Sukha, and we're particularly interested in the female Buddhas and the feminine principles of enlightenment.
Yeah.
And you told me a story in our preparations for this interview that really intrigued me. That in the Northern Treasures, there's a very special meditation practice or sadhana on Avalokiteshvara or Chenrezig that was written by Guru Padmasambhava at the request of his female disciples, such as Yeshe Tsogyal and others. So I would like it, could you share that story with our viewers?
This is a terma of Garwang Dorje.
Garwang Dorje's terma.
Yes. And 23 female disciples. There are two stories in the volume. There are 23 female disciples. Now, these 23 female disciples, it doesn't list all their names in the text, but Yeshe Tsogyal and Dorje Shelkardzo and Nugent Saleh and Princess Pimasel. I think in one of Tulku Tundup's books, he lists the 25 female disciples.
Oh, wow. I'll have to go look.
I tried to find it before this interview, and I couldn't find it, but I'm pretty sure it's in one of Tulku Tundup's books. These women went to Padmasambhava, and they said, it's not easy being a woman, and we don't have a lot of time, and we're not treated especially well, and we need something that works. We've got one shot at this, and it's got to work. And Padmasambhava said, well, I have a method like that, but you'll really have to promise to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Later, Yeshe Tsogyal went to him and made a big offering and made another supplication, and then he got them together, and he gave this Chenrezig Tsatsum Nyingtik. And sometimes it's called Tuji Chimpo Tsatsum Nyingtik, the great compassion in the essence of the three roots. And this is a Chenrezig practice that has a guru, yidam, a dakini, and protectors all in one sadhana. And there it comes in a very short form and a more extensive form.
Mm-hmm.
But the story says, the text said that all the female disciples took this practice as their heart practice, and they all achieved rainbow bodies in reliance on this.
And so this particular Chenrezig practice, has this sadhana been translated into English?
Good of it.
Pardon?
Not one word yet.
Not one word yet. So we have something to look forward to. So in terms of looking forward, going from the 8th century right up to where we are now, from your research, how many volumes do you have in the collection that's sort of referred to as the Northern Treasures?
There's somewhere between 50 and 60.
Okay, wow. And how much of that is translated into English?
The two most famous parts would be the Leodunma and prayer, the Dzogchen aspiration of Samantabhadra that many lamas and sanghas talk about. From
the Kuntuzangpo Minlam in Tibetan. That's a very famous prayer, the Kuntuzangpo Minlam. And that is also from Northern Treasures.
Yes.
And other than that, are there any scholars that are working on the Northern Treasures, or translators, or projects underway?
Well, the three guru sadhanas are translated, and ironically, Lama Zopa, although people say, oh, he's Galupa, but his previous life was a Northern Treasures yogi who practiced Garwang Dorje. And Dalai Lama feels a close connection with the fifth Dalai Lama, who is very interested in one of the Guru sadhanas. So Lama Zopa's group translated the inner Guru sadhana practice. There's a Tulku in Canada who practiced the outer Guru sadhana, and the secret Guru has only been practiced in the daily practice so far.
I see. So most of the hands-on practice for the Northern Treasures today is in Asia.
Yes.
Yes. So who are the lamas who are alive today who are holding this tradition in Asia?
His Holiness Taglung Setral Rinpoche is head of the Northern Treasures and now the sixth head of all the Nyingma. In Bhutan, there's...
What about what's his situation in India? Does he have a monastery, or how large is that community?
I think he's up to 200 to 300 monks. It's in Simla, which is a northern hill station. In Bhutan, there's Namkhai Ningpo. And the line of Namkhai Ningpo Tulkus started with the fifth Dalai Lama. He recognized the first Namkhai Ningpo and sent him to Dorje Drak. So he was enthroned and trained since the very beginning at Dorje Drak. And then there's also Gunjang Rinpoche in Sikkim.
Sikkim.
Gunjang Rinpoche is the rebirth of Yomo Tulku Shakya Zangpo. Shakya Zangpo's most famous treasure that the audience would know is the history of the stupa at Bodhana in Nepal.
Yes.
And that book has been translated and published, I think, by Dharma Publishing.
How about in Nepal?
In Nepal, there is a young man, about 25, Gakar Rinpoche. He has been collecting the teachings of Garwang Dorje and that branch because he's the tulku of one of Garwang Dorje's 5 heart sons. And this spring, he will finish. It's taken him 3 years to find all these teachings and to get them. And then he will do a 3-year retreat.
Okay, so now where are your connections today with the Northern lineage? Are you still in touch with Taklung Setra Rinpoche or the people in Nepal? Where are you most connected?
I am most connected with Taglung Setra Rinpoche and Gakar Rinpoche.
I see.
When Taglung Setra was last in America in 2010, he was in Virginia at Khandra Rinpoche's center. And at the end of giving the Kunzang Zangtal Longs, the Dzogchen cycle, he asked me to put up a website about Dorje Drak and the Northern Treasures. So I hope to get that up this year.
That would be it. We're looking forward. So we want to see this very soon. NorthernTreasures.com. You have to do it, Michael.
It's almost, I've collected most of the writings. I've invited several scholars. You mentioned earlier, and I didn't get to that. There are several Western scholars who have written dissertations or theses about various parts of the Northern Treasures. And I've contacted everyone that I found and said, will you please put out or give a sort of lay version as well as give us a link to the scholarly version. So I have 4 Western scholars and 2 Khenpos who are writing.
So your website is going to begin primarily as a resource center for learning about the Northern Treasures, like educational.
It is primarily to be like informational,
yeah.
And also to give people a chance who want to help support Dorje Drak. Historically, Dorje Drak in India, the Jangter has been somewhat, I call them the poor cousins of the Nyingma. They've been the smallest, and before Taglung Setra Rinpoche was famous, and he had absolutely nothing.
So Taklung Setra Rinpoche's monastery in Simla is also known as Dorje Drak?
Yes,
Oh, okay,
Tupindo.
okay. I wasn't sure if you were talking about Dorje Drak in Tibet or Dorje Drak
Oh,
in India, so I just wanted to clarify. Yeah, I'm sure that the website will find all those people. People with karmic connection, we can't escape,
right.
and we get found. And I really, connectivity and sangha is one of the three jewels, and we have a job to do. And I
Yes.
can only hope that and I know how much work it is to bring all these diverse elements together and be able to express that. But what I want to ask, in
Yes.
addition to that, is for opportunity for Western people to receive empowerment, transmission, and instruction experientially in the Northern Treasures. So life is not finished after you get this educational website up. It just begins.
Right.
And I hope you will be able to establish connection for Westerners that have a karmic connect. Just provide that vehicle for them. And I look for maybe we could do another interview after the website is up, and we could talk about how people are reacting to that. And maybe I think it will birth many plans and ideas. And I think that the lamas in Asia will be very happy to see this. So I
Yeah.
just want to thank you so much, Michael, for this interview today
Thank
and
you.
sharing with us who you are and what your plans are for the Northern Treasures. And I know together, we wish the Northern Treasures to bless the world, to bless all beings, and the longevity of the Buddha Dharma. So thank you so much.
So much.
Okay, bye bye, Michael.
Bye. Be